Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from the Real Turkey channel. I hope you have been good boys and girls or whatever your sexual inclination are, and Santa has brought you nice gifts. This hasn't been the case for Turkey. Santa has brought nothing but trouble for Turkish diplomacy, and that would be the subject of our, well, not the final, but the penultimate Real Turkey channel video about Turkey in 2019. Geopolitics will play prominently in Turkish asset pricing and in the Turkish performance in the performance of too much eggnog is the problem here. Santa never left. He decided to stay and party with Attila Yeşilada, who happens to be the presenter of this show, by the way, I think. Therefore, some mumbling is going to be very present in today's show. Anyhow, let me repeat myself. Geopolitical risk premium is going to play a prominent role in Turkish asset pricing and economic performance in 2020. In the video that you see in the next frame or underneath this video, I'll be talking about Turkish political risks, in particular the possibility of early elections. But in this video, I want to go over existing foreign policy risks as well as the two new ones that Santa brought. These are the war in Idlib, which is a Syrian province, which up to this point has pushed an estimated 300,000 poor Syrian refugees to Turkish border, and the Libyan War, where our ally, the Grand National Unity Government, is fighting against the National Libyan Army of General Hafter or Hafter. I think there are two different pronunciations. Turkish involvement with Libya has started with a maritime exclusive economic zone agreement, after which President Erdogan promised to send military aid, and that aid was demanded 3 days before the shooting of this video. At the end of 2019, Turkey has inherited or amassed quite a few political risks. Obviously, leading these are the threat of American sanctions, which are still on the table. One has been passed as a adjoinder or rider to the American military budget, which orders the president to punish Turkey using the CAATSA Sanctions Act. And the president will have to do something about it within the next 3 months. But it is believed that President Trump will pick the lightest items on the sanctions menu, the result of which being the sanctions not being extremely hurtful for Turkey. Turkey is also facing a second sanctions bill in the Senate called the Risch-Fernandez bill, which will probably be debated on the general floor in the new year, which may have more biting sanctions. There is the issue of Halkbank being on trial for allegedly circumventing sanctions on Iran, which may result in large penalties. On top of that, Turkey has established a safe zone in the northeast of Syria, which is not safe, to be exact, because there are terror attacks every day on the fringes. Turkish military and its allies, the National Syrian Army, largely consisting of Arabs and Turkmenis, are fighting PKK affiliates and sometimes even remnants of ISIS and Assad's army. In addition, that's a very costly military incursion because Mr. Erdogan still wants to resettle 1 million refugees there. And my humble estimate of the cost of doing so, as well as defending the safe zone, plus helping the 600,000 current inhabitants of the safe zone, could reach $8 to $10 billion within the next 12 months, which is a huge burden for Turkish treasury, which is empty. These are formidable problems for any nation. On top of that, we have the Idlib situation. I provide the map in the video, which you will see, Idlib is exactly the opposite end of Syria, at the northeast corner, right underneath the nose of Turkey. It's the last rebel bastion in the northwest of Syria, and the northern portion, including the major population center Idlib city, is still under the control of pro-Turkish militia. There are several of them, but let's face it, most of them are pro-Al-Qaeda or pro-ISIS, and they're currently facing a ruthless and really brutal onslaught by the Syrian army, Assad's army, as well as Russian air raids, which has killed thousands of civilians so far. Turkey cannot afford any more Syrian refugees. First of all, of course, they're a huge drain on our treasury as well as the welfare network, and they directly compete with AKP waters, thus making Erdogan's government extremely unpopular. As well, they're stealing jobs from Turkish workers, which also adds to the unease of the Turkish population about Syrian refugees. In addition to that, surrendering Idlib to Assad would make him a neighbor to Turkey, which would allow him to destabilize Turkish border regions. So Turkey is sort of stuck in this situation because Russia is also an ally of Assad, as well as being an ally of Turkey. And Turkey's appeals to Russia to resolve this situation peacefully have led to nowhere. It appears that Russia wants Assad to recapture Idlib, perhaps leaving Turkey a very narrow strip at the border where we can house the refugees, which is not a practical solution for Turkey. This is the first geopolitical threat that's facing Turkey in the new year. Turkey will either accept a huge number of refugees, causing the negative effects about AKP's popularity and the economy that I have just described, or it will have to break its alliance with Russia and resist Assad onslaught with the Turkish armed forces and its allied Arab forces, in which case we will have a war, and wars are expensive, uncertain, and most often than not, bad for markets. I don't know how President Erdogan will decide, but I must inform you that last Sunday, today is Monday by the way, 30th of December, Syrians and Turks have started protesting on the streets of Istanbul against Russia and Assad's aggression in Idlib. The Libya situation is more complicated. We really need the regime, the pro-Turkish regime in Libya to survive. You will see a second map that shows our allies in Libya being cornered in two small areas at the Mediterranean coast, Tripoli and I can't remember the name of the second city. My knowledge of Libyan geography is next to non-existing. And they're losing ground against General Hafter. There was sort of a stalemate in the war, but if the Western media reports are to be believed, Russia sent mercenaries and a lot of heavy military equipment to aid General Hafter, and he started pushing towards Tripoli, and in fact, most of the entrances to Tripoli may have been conquered by General Hafter. So Turkey needs to rush military aid to defend Tripoli, otherwise this exclusive economic zone agreement with the Libyan government will be ripped off because General Hafter doesn't recognize such an agreement, and Turkey will have no rights at that portion of the Mediterranean Sea. Turkey has so far promised to send a few naval vessels which would help defend the city by bombing Hafter's forces, as well as an army contingent which presumably would be limited to providing, training and surveillance assistance. And rumor has it, I stress this is only a rumor, that some of the Syrian brigades which fought in the Operation Peace Spring will also be shifted to Tripoli, but the government in Tripoli denies this allegation. I really can't know what the truth is. But again, let's focus on the end game and what may happen. If we lose Tripoli, if our allies lose Tripoli, if General Hafter becomes the official sovereign of Libya, obviously he will not recognize our maritime agreement with Libya, which will reduce our ability to bargain for a fair share of the maritime landscape with the Greek Cypriots, Egypt, and Israel. And a resolution to the Middle Eastern energy conflict will be much more difficult because we would have much fewer ace cards up our sleeve. On the other hand, our ability to send significant amounts of military aid is limited by the distance between Turkey and Libya, and the fact that the pro-Turkish government controls only a very small area from which staging an attack, a counterattack, is going to be extremely difficult. At the end, it's very likely that General Hafter will win, in which case, of course, Mr. Erdogan would lose face as well as a very valuable asset in terms of defending our rights in the Mediterranean, which would reflect back to his popularity among the voters and may even precipitate the early elections that I shall mention, or I shall have had mentioned in the video, that we shall have had shot in the near future or for the past. And most importantly, once again, we're facing, Russian proxies, which casts doubt about the solidity of this alliance between Turkey and Russia and how long Turkey will stick to this alliance and what the costs would be if Mr. Erdogan were to decide to break up that alliance in favor of such United States. At the end, Turkey is staging economic recovery. Turkish equities and bonds have staged a sharp rally along with the other emerging markets at the end of the year. But the durability of this rally largely depends not only on economic performance, but on how these geopolitical risks will be handled and affect the Turkish economy. And so far, I'm really not very optimistic that this government has the ability or the capacity to handle so many conflicts at so many different fronts simultaneously and successfully. I am very worried that diplomatic errors or defeats would end the rallies, cause another depreciation of the currency, and thus hurt Turkey's economic performance. This was Atilla Yeşilada presenting for Real Turkey channel, not at his most coherent, but hey, it's the season to be merry, okay? And I wish all of our audience a happy new year, peace and prosperity. Live long and prosper, as Dr. Spock would say. Bye-bye now.